there have been miraculous things that have come together that have positioned me to do some things that I never thought I would be able to accomplish, and now here I sit in a position to have more impact than a 17-year-old kid could have ever dreamt of having, even though I set an amazingly unrealistic goal. But I'm getting closer to it every day.
Well, tell me about your motivational speaking company.
Yeah. Motivational speaking is something that we enjoy doing. It is less of a company and more of a nonprofit function of my life. I am passionate about changing lives through the spoken word. I believe ultimately that if you can figure out what you need to say and you say it well, it helps to transform hearts and it changes our activities. My life was changed by a guy who spent the time and invested himself in me, and he did it through the spoken word. He encouraged me, but he also disciplined me. He encouraged me to be more disciplined and more focused. He encouraged me to have a good time and to serve other people, to put others before myself. All that comes together and is my springboard into public service. That someone paid it forward, and now it's my opportunity to pay it forward. And so I'm stuck in an ideal that we can make a difference. That one person from the poorest parts of North Charleston can find himself in a position where he can influence America for good. That's a dream come true. That's a place where you know the goodness of America. And it doesn't happen because you wish it. It happens through a lot of bumps and bruises, the right people coming along, like the mentors. But as my mother taught me, individual responsibility is still an absolute necessity. There is no free lunch. Or as Zig Ziglar says, there ain't no free lunch. And he's just right. There's no free lunch. But that's good news. If someone can feed you, then they determine your limitation. They determine which rung on the ladder you have to live within or under. I'm blessed that there is no such thing, that we can climb all the way up to the top of the ladder. The key is to make sure that it's leaning against the right house. You might get to the top and not like what you get, but it's your choice. And it's a blessing to live in this country. I don't know that you can do that anywhere else.
Tell me about the most important people in your life.
My grandfather certainly tops the scales as one of the most important individuals in my life. My grandfather is 89 years old. He has seen the best and the worst of South Carolina, but he is just filled with love. He is a tough guy. He was a tough disciplinarian when we were living at his house several years ago, when we were still all living together in a little 1,100 square foot house with 5 or 6 of us living in that house, 2 bedrooms. And so I got very comfortable having no privacy. But my grandfather, he was committed to giving discipline. He didn't say a lot, but you knew whatever he said he meant. Now, every Sunday, we get to hang out for a couple hours a Sunday, and we just drive around Charleston, or the Tri-County area. We drive around because he was in construction. He enjoys looking at the handiwork of other folks who are in construction. He says oftentimes, he always calls me Timmy. He said, Timmy, the way they build houses today are just not that good. When he was building houses, and they did it right, and we'll walk into a house that's vacant or something, and you can hear the floorboard cracking and moving, and he's like, that's not good. That didn't happen when he built the house. And I think he was probably right, to tell you the truth. I mean, houses 60, 70 years ago, stood the test of time. And so spend that time with my grandfather. He has less than a 3rd grade education, and he is the wisest guy I know. My nephew, very important. My nephew found himself in a situation that was similar to mine. His parents were divorced, and I had an opportunity to step in and provide some leadership there, and it was nice to pay it back. John paid it forward. I was able to pay it back. My nephew is a great kid. He's right now somewhere in Europe. He'll spend a semester at Oxford University. He goes full-time at Georgia Tech. He was able to get an academic scholarship in part. Keeps the amount of dollars that I have to pay for him to go to that school very, very low. So it's been a blessing to be a part of his life in such a major way. But it taught me a lot about discipline. It taught me a lot about family, a lot about sacrifice. And having a kid who's a couple hours away and driving 3 hours to a 30-minute basketball game where the end score is 12-5 or 12-8, get in that car and driving all the way back. I remember wanting someone to be there for my games when I was playing ball, and my dad wasn't there, and so making sure that my nephew didn't have that longing was important to me. And so I spent a lot of time on the road going to see him during different football seasons and basketball seasons. He tried football for a little while, but he didn't like it so much. So he's a skinny guy, so he decided to play basketball. He's much better at it.
Who else do you mentioned your
Yeah,
grandfather?
Mom, of course, is obviously, number one. There's no question. She's my role model. She's my hero. She's the person who is, without question, paid the price so that I could stand or actually sit here before you today. She was, the toughest person I ever met, and also the most encouraging person I've ever met. It's just a great balance, and we're best friends. Every Saturday I take her to lunch. Now, you're talking about creatures of habit. We have lunch, at California Dreaming, every Saturday that I'm in town, and then we'll have dinner after I take my grandfather out at Outback every Sunday, around 3 o'clock. We change it. Sometimes we get flexible and go to at 5 o'clock instead of 3 o'clock. But we're creatures of habit, and it's just neat to be able to reinvest time in the people who, when Tim Scott was not someone that anyone wanted to know, I had people who were encouraging me and kind of stoking the flames. It was just neat.
Any teachers that you remember as being influential?
Yeah, I had several teachers that were very influential. Mrs. Cryer, who was never really a teacher, she was just a strong role model at Stall High School for me. She was there through thick and thin. I just remember her smile. She has an incredible smile. Sorry, California Dreaming. A couple Sundays ago, and it was just so good to see her. She was there with her family, and I just remember all the times I was walking in the halls at Stall High School, and she was just a very encouraging person. I remember Miss Gabe, who Miss Gabe, Gabe Gibson at this point, I think it is. Miss Gabe was the student government advisor, and I was the student government president. We had a great relationship, and when I needed just a shoulder to cry on because one girl crushed my heart, Miss K was consistently there. When I was trying to change the world at high school, Miss K was one of the ones encouraging me to keep moving forward, keep trying, keep encouraging me. I remember Mrs. Greenberg. Mrs. Greenberg was my algebra teacher as a freshman. She was fabulous. She was a tough-as-nails kind of person, however. But she loved me, and you could sense it. She was not easy on me. She always encouraged me, i.e. forced me to work hard. Now, I was flunking almost every other subject, but I got a B in algebra. Go figure, really. It was because I could sense her love and appreciation, but I was also able to feel her discipline. And there was limits in her class that I could not go beyond, and that was good for me at the time. I needed that. So Mrs. Greenberg, I think she's still at Triton Technical College now, life changer for me. She and Mrs. Lynch, another little lady. Mrs. Lynch was just a short little lady, mean as a snake at the time. She was my English teacher as a freshman. But she was unwilling to give me what I did not earn. Incredibly valuable lesson. She was unwilling to give me what I did not earn. I get it now. The lessons that I learned back then, the lessons that I received back then took a couple decades for me to figure it out, by the way. But I look at Mrs. Lynch, who's passed away. I just remember how much she cared about me. And she cared enough to call my mom. She cared enough to tell me that you can do better, and she cared enough to tell me that if you don't do better, you're going to fail this class. And she meant it.
Okay, last question. Tell me about some of your hobbies, things you like to do in your spare time.
Spare time is a fleeting concept for me. I don't have much spare time. I enjoy going to church. I'm on the board of trustees at my church, Seacoast, which is a great opportunity to serve. I've been on the Triton United Way board. I was the treasurer at Roper St. Francis Foundation. I was on the board of directors for Heritage Trust Development Credit Union. I served on the Aviation Authority. I was on the COG board. Lots of my free time was invested in helping to move our community forward because this is a community that served me when no one cared who Tim Scott was.